Person, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Is there anything you need to declare?
No.
Thank you. Moving on, I'll ask if there are any additions or deletions to this agenda. Okay. None noted. Moving on to item number 3, the approval of the agenda. Look for direction. Councilor Buckingham.
I move that the agenda dated September 23rd, 2019 be approved.
Seconder, Councilor Diachuk. Any discussion? Any comments, Councilor Thorson?
No comment.
I'll call for the question. All in favor? How do you vote, Councilor Thorson?
I vote in favor.
Carried. Moving on to item number 4, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Looking for direction from council. Councilor Buckingham.
The regular council minutes dated September 9th, 2019 be approved.
Seconder? Councilor Diachuk. Any questions before I call for the question? Not seeing or noting any? All in favor? Councilor Thorson, how do you vote?
I vote in favor.
Carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? None noted. Councilor Thorson?
No, nothing.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6. 6.1, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. I will be presenting the first item, which is the entrance signage design and install award for signage at each entrance of the community. The recommendation is that the Council award the entrance signs project to PM Signs of Edmonton, Alberta, in the amount of $187,700.10 plus GST, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign and seal all the necessary documents. In addition, the Council approve a contingency allowance of 5% in the amount of $9,385.01 plus GST to be funded from capital project number 1963004, entrance and placemaking signs budget. The issue at hand is our current signs need updating to align with the City of Lloydminster brand standards. Additionally, due to changing municipal boundaries, the signs are no longer in an appropriate location. And furthermore, that 2 additional signs will be added to 50th Avenue near the north and south city boundary. The current border city signs were approved by council in June of 1990. The signs have reached their end of useful life and need to be replaced and relocated. The administration issued a RFP on August 1st, 2019. The RFP closed on August 23rd, 2019 and received 6 submissions. Vendors were asked to submit concept designs with their proposals that were scored based on creativity, competency, and the inclusion of solar power. The administration will work with the selected vendor to finalize the design and present the final design to council for approval before any signs are constructed. The installation date for this project will be dependent on final design approval and weather. Proposed schedules suggest late December as best case scenario for installation. Final sign location will also be determined during consultations with council and neighboring municipalities, and I'll add to that transportation, Alberta Saskatchewan Transportation and their approvals. The total scores and tender amounts, excluding GST, are provided below. These amounts include the design, construction, and installation with solar power. One note is all bright signs did not provide a solar option and would have additional electrical costs to the price noted below. The options we have before you today are that council award the entrance signage project to PM Signs of Edmonton for the amounts below, or that council not award the project, or that council will request more information. The budget for the project is $250,000, and if PM Signs is awarded the cost for the total, for 4 signs, the maximum offset limit will be $206,940.17, including contingency and GST. An environmental vendor has been selected that is providing the LED lighting as well as solar power solutions. I'll ask for any questions.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilor? Councilor Baker.
Your Worship, a matter of order legitimacy, pardon me. I'm not sure what order this should happen in because I forget. I would like to propose a motion to postpone, and I know that the motion to postpone is indefinite, and I believe it's based on certain items and conditions, and I need some help to make sure I follow protocol.
Okay. City Clerk.
So I believe the motion to postpone is a debatable motion, and it's one that you can make. You also have the option to table an item, or postpone it to a certain time or date.
So the table, City Clerk, if I may, be open-ended.
I want to open it.
Table would then have to be lifted from the table by council.
Okay. So I guess,
To postpone it, it is recommended when you postpone a matter that you set time.
Indefinitely?
Well, indefinitely wouldn't be, then you'd have to bring it back. It's usually postponed to a time and date to a future council meeting.
so I think table would be, what the direction you want to, if that's where you want to go, Councilor, is you'd like to table this motion. Would be the motion, or table this item. Is that the correct wording?
So, as it says, a motion.
I haven't done my research on this as well as I should have. But my intention was, if I may speak on it, Your Worship, the two things. First of all, three things. First of all, I think in due course, it's a great project. In due course. But I don't think it's in order to do that right now, based for two reasons. Number one is we're in the process of annexation, and we don't know where the annexation is going to be completed, and we don't know where, and then if the borders are going to move or where they're going to be in the final design or approved. So I think we should make sure we know that before we proceed. Secondly, as you look at this, we really need to spend $200,000 at this time when many businesses are still struggling and things aren't as great as, I hate to be negative, but as good as everybody might think, or some people might think. There are businesses that are doing well and some not so well, and you have to consider the tax load. And I think it would be better suited to do this project when the economy's better and once the proposed annexation boundaries are settled, wherever they may be. So that's my intention, and I apologize for not having the motion just right, but I did look it up.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. I'll ask the clerk to comment on table.
So just so council's clear on what their options are, council under section 24 of the procedure bylaw may postpone a motion. A motion may be postponed to a later date in the meeting, or to a specified time and date, or indefinitely. A motion to postpone is debatable and includes motion being postponed and all connected amendments. When a motion has been postponed, it may be considered at any time by a majority vote of the council. A motion to table must be brought back to the prior conclusion of the meeting it was tabled at. A motion to take a vote from the table is not debatable or amendable. It requires a majority vote. And a motion taken from the table is defeated. It may only be made again after council has addressed some other business or matter. So what Councillor Baker is looking for is a motion to postpone.
Postpone, yeah.
Indefinitely, I believe, is what you're
Yeah, not table.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Someone who wishes to carry, I second that motion. Councillor. Now discussion. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can't say that I wasn't thinking the same thing. What I don't know is what implications doing this has. So from the economic development standpoint, from monies and time invested by staff at this point, what the financial implications could be for this in a better economy, if that were the case, how much more this might end up costing in the end. Because what we found in a few situations is because the economy is what it is, we have found that a lot of our processes and a lot of our tenders have come in under budget. People are looking for that work. Is it something that we know? People are looking for this work and the budget, or the tenders came in at a specific price because they really are looking for work, and if we wait, it could be a third again more, or, I mean, that's absolutely a guess, but I don't know what this kind of signage should cost. You know, I'm not out shopping for this type of thing, so I'd like to kind of get an understanding of the potential impacts of postponing this motion.
Take a crack at it. I would assume that given the economy, we found in a lot of our projects that we received better pricing because of the downturn in the economy, so I would say that is. When we budgeted $250,000, it was actually budgeted for 2 signs. So based on what we found, other municipalities that paid at different times in the economy, we didn't know exactly when every place did theirs. We were banking on about $125,000 a sign. So the fact that we were able to do all 4 signs within the allotted budget and still be roughly $40,000 under budget, we viewed as a positive. And it is, like I said, like the RFD says, the signs have been since 1990. We haven't replaced them. As for the annexation boundary, that is a fair comment, and we're aware of that. We've had discussions. Typically, when you say you have the welcome signs, they are outside your boundary already, so you would need cooperation from your municipal partners, and that's something that I know Dan has had conversations with the partners already, and I wouldn't say we pinpointed exactly where they're going to go, but we haven't seen anything that's going to be a stumbling block at this point.
Councilor Belichick. Sorry.
Does that answer your question, Councilor?
Yeah, it's there. I just, you know, our job is to be good financial stewards and make good decisions. I just don't feel I can make a decision one way or the other without a little bit more of that information, because what I don't want to happen is this to come in at $125,000 a sign, like you said, for 4 signs when we decide it's the right time to do it, as opposed to doing it now when it was inside the 2019 budget. This isn't a addition to the budget. This was something. Sorry. This was something that wasn't budgeted at. So I just wanted to have that discussion in a little more depth, because maybe the right decision is to go ahead today and make this happen because of the financial implications are on the plus side for us. But I just wanted to have that discussion.
You're correct in that it wasn't a budget. It went through the budget approval process like every other project did.
Yes, I wanted to be clear that you're not asking for more money than what was budgeted.
That's correct.
We are asking for a budgeted item to be approved or not. And I feel that the pricing is probably good, but I still am on the fence whether it's the right time.
Councilor Belichick.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So a couple things, I guess. When we brought the economic development activities back inside the city, it came with a couple $100,000 and change. There were some reserves that they brought over, and I'm anticipating that those reserves, in fact, are what's driving this budget at this point in time, or how are the funds dispersed or brought forward? Because I know when the economic development was moving back into the city, they had money that was set aside. I remember getting into a specific discussion that led to a whole bunch of other issues for me. But at that point in time, it was roughly $200,000 plus that was left in the budget with economic development. So I'm wondering if those capital dollars that were left in the account of economic development are the dollars, in fact, that are still being used and have been contained or brought forward. Because there was money in there that was brought forward.
Amanda, can you comment on that?
Yeah, I wasn't around when that.
No, well, you weren't.
And so.
It's too bad.
Yes, so I'm not aware. My assumption is the money went into the general fund of the city, and so when the reserve policy comes forward, there will be some dollars allotted to each department. But this project in particular came from the general capital budget that the city put forth.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain it was at least $185,000 that was brought over from economic development. So those dollars have been sitting there prior, And I would anticipate if that, they were operating independently from the city, probably those would be the dollars that would be funding this. So I don't know where those dollars went eventually, but certainly they would have been dollars that have been in place now for 2 or 3 years prior. So that's the only thing around this. I mean, my concern is the border, but as you've pointed out, I guess, be honest, that, your sign isn't in your property anyways to start with. It's well in advance.
That's fair.
Yeah, I had that uneasy feeling in my stomach as soon as I, started to really take a look at it. So I did a little poll there with a number of local businesses, and most of them, well, they all had the same outcome. But a lot of them were saying, my taxes have gone up in the last couple of years, fairly significant, and they get that, they understand that. But to spend, $100,000 to $200,000 on signs at this time just didn't seem prudent. They were not in favor in that form. So my gut says that I believe 100% in the project itself, and all about the community pride. I'm the guy, but the timing I really do question.
Councilor Baker, and then I'll get Councilor Thompson. Councilor Baker?
Can I
Yes, sir. You
respond?
can speak. Yeah.
Thank you. I know there's all kinds of arguments, why we should or why we shouldn't. We got this money, it's city money, it's taxpayers' dollars, we can allocate it wherever we have to. 2 years from now or a year from now, if the boundaries are settled and you want to do signs, we can start all over again. The idea is what the signs are going to cost. The way I read that whole document, we don't know. We've got some sketches of proposed plans and a figure of $187,000 plus a contingency. But we don't have a design, approved drawing of what this product's really going to be. It was a strange kind of a tender. Normally when you do a request for proposals, you would go out and get someone to design a sign or 3 signs and then ask for tenders. You wouldn't ask the guy bidding on it. You say, I want a sign, I give him conditions, let him design a sign, give you a complete drawing with specs and a price, then you can decide. But what I saw on Friday was very little, a sketch picture of a sign. And we're trying to judge it by points, which is the best sign and this and that. And we didn't see any of that. So that's the one thing that bothers me. But more importantly is, it's the cost. $200,000 is a lot of money, boys and girls. It really is. And there's lots of things we need to do in this city. And I'm sure you know them. And I'm sure there's a priority list. The third thing is, when you do a budget, look at all our budgets. We're over budget just about on everything. And I don't fault anybody for that. If you're under budget, you're going to lose money. I don't care which project you did, this road or that road. Sometimes you get little breaks, the prices come in better. But not everything's dropped as much as everybody would like to think it is. A cubic yard of cement or a cubic yard of asphalt has not dropped. Somebody took a little less in their margin. That's all they've done. But the wholesale price of concrete hasn't gone down. It's gone up, in fact. So to say that we're going to do it because it's a smaller economy, but you can negotiate with more companies if you do a design. You can ask 20 companies to bid on your work. But my concern is spending the $200,000 or whatever the number's going to be now in this economy at this time and not knowing where the boundaries are. It just does not make sense to put new signs up because we used the story that we needed to put them up because our boundaries and signs don't align. Well, they may not align if we move them because I don't know where the boundaries are going to go. I've never seen a map approved the annexation plan. That's my argument, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. I would like to chime in to Councilor Thorson because, Councilor Thorson, I'm not sure when we lost you, but there was a motion.
I just have a question first. Are we still debating the motion on the floor to postponement?
Yes, we are.
And did that get a second here?
It did.
Okay, I didn't catch that. My call got dropped.
Okay.
So anyway, and that's what we're debating right now is that postponement.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Well, I understand the arguments on both sides. I think it's a fair point that Councillor Baker's making. It is a lot of money, and I understand the argument as far as the boundary change too. So in the end, I'm not against the idea of of waiting until the boundary change, but on the other hand, just to make sure I confuse people, you know, in Doug Griffith, 13 Ways to Kill a Community, one of those ways is don't paint. And don't paint means don't continue to beautify your community, show travelers what we're all about, and, you know, kind of an outward projection of what you think the value of your community is to the rest of the world. So when you look at it like that, there's an argument to continue to do these things even in a tough economy, because from a tourism perspective, if you still want people coming in your door, you don't want to have it looking dumpy on their way in. It's the sign starting to have cracks and things like that, and you need to replace it. So I'm fine with postponement, but I don't think that it's a permanent postponement. I still think it's something we may have to do, maybe at a cheaper option, maybe a little bit less expensive. We can find a different type of material we're looking for or something. But at the end of the day, I still think it's important that we do the project. And I'm fine with waiting until after annexation. That was my comment.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. It's funny, I brought up exactly what Councillor Torreson said from Doug's thing, and the don't paint thing was right there. So that's one of the points I wanted to make, same thing. My question though now goes back, if we do postpone this, it says right in here that the signs that we have currently are past their useful life, for lack of a better term, right? Is there a safety concern there? If we don't go ahead and put the new signage up, is there still a requirement in administration's perspective that we need to take the old ones down?
That's a question I'd have to get answered. I've never heard it being a safety issue, more of a out of life 1990 outdated in terms of the graphic, the artwork doesn't fit our today's standards in terms of our branding. That's probably more the issue. If it is a safety issue, obviously they'll be removed, but I don't think it is. I will confirm that.
As we continue to host wonderful events in the community, including the 2020 Summer Games coming up, it is valuable to have that impression as you come into town from 3 sides, most likely not 4 for the Summer Games particularly. But there is absolute merit in what Councillor Torreson said, and what Doug Griffiths has told us about continuing to paint, even though it may not be the best option at all times. So.
Any further discussion? Councillor
Yeah,
Batchor.
just one other piece, I guess, because I'm still locked into that economic development piece in my head. And I guess I'm wondering if we're not going to do the signs, or are there other things the city is going to do to continue to promote itself, to make it look good, as well as the rest? Because I think the point is a valid one around ensuring that we're open for business, we look like a progressive city, that we're well looked after, and all those pieces need to be there. And I understand from the other perspective that, if your roads have filled with potholes and your sidewalks are falling apart, no one's likely to stop and visit. But by the same token, I don't think we're at that place, and we're a lot better off than that. And so I guess the question from an economic perspective is, we put all those things we're doing on hold from economic development. We have our land department out putting up banners and signs. Should we not have done that? But they're up there, they're waiting. What's the cost? And I haven't heard of people about it. I haven't heard a complaint about it. So I'm sort of just trying to wrap my head around where we are as a council around these kind of activities. Are we saying no spending on promotion at all, or is this the tip of a bigger conversation that we need to have? Is it just a conversation about the signs? Because I'm concerned if we're going to say that not putting these signs up is a message that we're not doing anything else. And I think that's a wrong approach. So I'd like to know where we're at relative to that.
Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. Sorry to keep coming back. I had these written down. The last question I have, I promise, is how long are these good for, these quotes? If we said today that we would like to proceed with this project possibly in February or March of 2020, is there a timeline on what has been presented to us?
So the quotes themselves are good for 60 days.
So we would, if we tabled this or postponed it, after 60 days, we'd have to go through the whole RFP process and do everything again, but we could have it sit for 60 days.
We have till October 23rd, and then once October 23rd comes around, we have to cancel it, repost the public RFP.
Okay, good, thank you.
I think I've heard several very good discussions and comments on both sides, moving it forward and not moving it forward. Concern about where do we put it. I think that is a huge concern in the community. And I did hear you say, if I can put words in, what I understood, St. Andrew, is that there's been discussions. And I think that to help resolve that concern, if we could actually could come forward to council with a proposal of where we could potentially see them put with our neighboring municipalities, because it was discussed, you'll find the sign usually before you enter the community. And I hear what you're saying, Councilor Baker, we're in annexation, and where does that city limit? So when I think of other cities, those signs are outside the city. I'll use our neighbors to the east. Before you enter in the RM building, their sign is actually on city proper. So as an example, if we sent administration back to determine potential sites, give us a much better idea, because I can understand taxpayers saying, well, why would you move it here and then have to move it again, and things like that. But if and when annexation is complete and we receive approval from the MGB, if that's what also occurs. So I'm wondering if there's a possibility that administration can take it back, do a little more legwork on it in the next couple of weeks from that perspective, and answer some of the questions that exist. I know it doesn't answer all the questions. I've heard your comments, Council, about costs. When we went into this budget, we did it last year. It is approved as an approved budgetary expense, but it's still got to come back to council, which that's what it's doing today. But if we could look to a compromise that, not saying that it's not tabled or postponed, but try and see if administration can come back and brings back some more detail. And I'd love to see everyone in if we had a full council to discuss this. There's 7. I realize that we don't today, and Councilor Thorson is able to by vote by phone, but if that was agreeable to send that back with your postponement, Councilor, and see if we can get some more information. I guess that's what I'm looking for. If that was, as the mover of the motion, you can postpone it indefinitely, and I guess we could get back to council to set a date, or don't have the exact council meeting that would potentially be before the 23rd.
If there is an item that is postponed, and it's postponed indefinitely, council through majority can lift that at any time that that majority determines to do so, or council may set a date for it to come back.
Okay.
Just a note on really the only one that's impacted from a boundary decision is the west. The north, the one heading sort of south, our boundary already is 1/4 section to the south already on the Saskatchewan side, not the Alberta side. So that one, that side's taken care of. As you mentioned, the Wilton one would probably be inside our boundary on the east side, and on the north side, we'd be just on the other side of, what's that, 59th? Yeah, so anyways, they're really the only one we're talking about here west, but we can finalize that if that's the wish. However, I'm hearing it's more of the dollar value and the project of that than it is the annexation. But again, your call, but what council decides.
And you're right, City Manager, there's 2 questions. Councilor Thorson, did you have any other comments?
No.
Okay. Councilor Baker.
Your worship, if I may, the idea of putting the signs out in the RMs of the county, I don't like that idea at all, and I'll tell you why. And it's happened to me personally, as a member of council. Many times I've been phoned, and was phoned, about why didn't the city clean up and cut the grass in the ditches a mile west of Lloydminster and not in our jurisdiction. I'd say, well, that's not in the city. And they'd say, well, your signs are there, or this or that. That's where the signs are today. So if you want to put your signs a mile out and deal with all those concerns about maintaining an urban setting in a rural area, go for it. But I'll tell you, it's not our land a mile west of our borders. So think about that. Because you're the one that has to deal with it, or his worship has to. So that's the part that, it's not our property, and the ditch isn't our property. So keep that in mind, please.
Appreciate that, Council. All right, we have a motion on the floor to postpone indefinitely. It's seconded. Any other comments? Before I call the question. Councilor Thorson, any other comments?
No additional comments.
All right. So I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion to postpone indefinitely? Those opposed? How do you vote, Councilor Thorson?
I vote against.
The motion is defeated. So we're back to the business at hand. I will look to council for direction on the motion at the options that were presented, or no, so I'm looking for Councilor Dias.
I think I'd just like to amend that, the motion that Councillor Baker made to say that we provide our administration 2 weeks to come back with some of the information so we can have a clearer picture on location and some of the challenges that are around there. And perhaps if we can also get a little more context even on some of the economic development funding that's coming forward and what's the other context and other pieces that are being done. That we have 30 days, you said October 23rd?
October 23rd.
October 23rd, I guess the meeting prior to that, which would be that we table this until whatever that meeting is prior to October 3rd, this motion. So we have all the information and make a decision at that point in time.
October 7th. October 7th, excuse me, October 7th is the only council meeting between now and then.
Okay, and the 23rd is on what date, saying, yeah, well, we need
23rd is a Wednesday, the 21st is a GPC.
Okay, so I guess it's a meeting prior to that. So you said October 7th?
October 7th.
So
Okay.
motion then to postpone.
Motion to postpone
This item.
this item until October the 7th.
Second.
Pardon me, Your Worship.
We're postponing, so let me finally get a seconder, and then I'll explain if I may, Councilor. Second. So, seconded by Councilor Buckingham. Being proposed, the motion is that this item will be postponed till October 7th, sent back to administration for more information on budget, monies from economic development from previous potential locations, so that council has more information to make a decision on.
I thought we just defeated the motion.
We defeated the motion, Councilor, to postpone indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
But this is moving it 2 weeks, I believe 2 weeks from now, to bring it back to council. Does it make, not clear, Council?
I guess when it defeated, I mean,
So the motion, the motion that you had proposed from the floor.
to my ear, I voted the wrong way. If we defeated the motion to postpone, I voted the wrong way, but that's my vote.
No, you did vote the way I believe you wanted to vote.
Good vote.
You supported the motion.
I supported the motion.
You supported the motion. The motion was defeated. But there's a new motion that's been put forward to postpone it.
Oh, the motion, okay, I got it now, sorry.
No problem, no problem. I just want to make sure, yeah, I just want to make sure we're clear. So, any questions?
Not any more than I said.
Councilor Torreson, any questions or comments?
No, I think it's a good idea to put a time limit on when we're postponing it till, so it's a much better plan. I think that was the only thing that scared me off with our last motion, so good idea.
Okay, with that, any further questions? I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion to postpone? Opposed? Councilor Buckingham, how do you vote? Sorry, Councilor Torreson?
Vote in favor.
In favor. Motion carried. Moving on to item number 6.1, or 6.3.1. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, to present policy 134-04 reserves policy. I'll ask the Chief Financial Officer, Denise McDonald, to present.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council.
Good afternoon.
Before you is the reserves policy. On September 16th, we introduced it at the GPC meeting, and there was advice from council to make a few changes to it. So I'll just quickly go through those changes that we introduced into the policy. So we added the definition of emergency and included it in two of the specific reserve definitions. One, the city manager contingency reserve, as well as the sustainability and resiliency reserve. We changed the formulas and added bullet items on there on page 19. Under 7.1.11, we have the cash plus short-term investments plus long-term investments more than or equal to total reserve balances. And we're bringing it back for council's decision on it. So we're looking for a council to put forward the recommendation to approve the policy or change it, give us direction to change it, or further direction on this matter. It will also include repealing previous policies, to which we've added two policies, the utility debenture sinking fund, which wasn't in use but was sitting on the books, as well as the capital asset replacement policy. So we would have the two motions going forward for this recommended item.
Thank you very much, CFO. Questions, comments, council, regarding A, the reserve policy that was proposed at the GPC with amendments as requested from the GPC meeting? Councilor Thorson, any comments?
Yeah, I have a few comments here. Some of them are going to sound awfully similar to the same thing I was saying at the last GTC, but in either case, one of the main reasons I wanted to call this meeting today and to be available on the phone is because of this policy. I'm really pleased to see the policy come forward, as it is one of our strategic priorities of our 2017 to 2021 strategic plan. I also, when I was reading through, I really liked the fact that it accomplishes the city's goal of getting to a more financially sustainable future. The system that it creates gives us the ability to pay for new projects, as well as put money away for existing assets as they depreciate. And then it will also give us some resiliency into our operations to give us the flexibility to make important decisions. So, end of the day, I am really happy to see it, and I'm really thankful, for the finance team putting it together, because I really think that it does everything we want it to do, including incentivizes innovation, and also it disincentivizes, the wrong kind of behavior with padding budgets and sandbagging. So, one of the things I like is that we're getting to a point where it is policy as to how we're going to treat our reserves and ensure that we have the financial means to actually support what we're going to plan on doing within the reserve side of it, that you actually have the financial means to accomplish those goals. Seeing that's something that is not always followed correctly by the city. So anyway, that was my comment.
Thank you, Councilor. I think those are well said.
Summed it up very well.
Very well. Certainly, Councilor Thorson's background in finance lends a great deal of credibility to understanding that, not that we don't understand, but I think he lives it every day and certainly prides himself on that. And I certainly appreciate the comments he's made, and I, again, want to say thank you to the finance team. I know this was a long time coming. Chief Financial Officer, your team and yourself have put an immense amount of time into this, and I think this sets the foundation. As we know, if without a financial foundation, we can go very easily, and I think this is the direction that we want to go. That's what we heard from the taxpayers and the voters in 2016 when they sent us here to do the job that they've elected us to do. So I truly appreciate the work that's been done. Any other comments? Not seeing any, I will ask for direction on the first recommendation regarding the approval of this policy. Councilor Pagno.
The council approved policy number 134-04, the reserves policy.
Second. Councilor Dutch. Any further discussion? Councilor Thorson, any further discussion?
No.
With that, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Councilor Thorson, how do you vote?
In favor.
Carried. Now I'll look to council for a recommendation regarding repealing informal policies. Councilor Craig.
That council repeal the following policies: FA-07-92-64306, Arterial Roads Acreage Assessment Reserve Policy, FA-10-92-64330, Equipment Pool Reserve Policy, FA-18-92-64603, Future Land Development Reserve Policy, FA-14-92-64402, Off-Site Service Charge Reserve Policy, FA-19-92-64634, Tourist Attraction Reserve Policy, and 017-2017- Municipal Stabilization Reserve Policy.
And two additional policies.
FA-16-92-64416 Utility Debenture Sinking Fund, and 013-2017 Capital Asset Replacement.
Thank you, Councilor. Seconder? Councilor Gottschalk. Any further discussion? I think this cleans up the policy network from finance and brings us right up to speed, I believe. Councilor Thorson, any further comments?
No comment.
With that, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Sorry, Councilor opposed? Councilor Thorson, how do you vote?
I vote in favor.
Carried. Thank you very much, Chief Financial Officer. Moving on to 6.3.2, and I guess that is going back to the Chief Financial Officer.
Before you is our reallocation of the current unrestricted reserves. So as a result of the reserves policy, we needed to realign our reserves to follow that policy. And so initially we had put forward just unrestricted reserves, but there was a number of movement around. So if I could just ask you to consider that this is reallocation of the current reserves. We have listed there all the reserves totaling $40,101,414, and the new names separating the unrestricted into operating and capital. As a result, I would ask that council approve the reallocation of the current reserves, removing the word unrestricted, totaling $40,101,414 based on administration's proposal. The next option would be to not approve the reallocation, and the third option would be to ask for further direction.
Thank you, Chief Financial Officer. Questions or comments? Councilor Thorson, any comments?
Not really. I mean, it seems more like just a good practice housekeeping issue after we, removed a bunch of the names of those other reserves and are now setting them up in a different way under this new policy. So I think it's a good idea to do it and get it out of the way right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker.
Just one question, and I had to answer once. The bid, surplus and bid, local improvement, district reserve, what did we do with that? I mean, we did something with it, but I don't remember.
So I think if I'll take a crack at this, administration, correct me if I'm wrong. The bid is sitting in an account under this policy to be restricted. It is deemed for downtown improvement.
That's okay.
Yeah, so it's sitting there, subject to the movement forward on the downtown improvement.
But it's pointed.
Yeah, that's where it is restricted, and I think that's the guidelines in general speaking, Councilor, that I'm on the understanding that's where that money is earmarked for.
Thank you.
Is that administration? Any other questions or comments? Once again, Councilor Thorson wrapped it up very nice and tight from that perspective. So I think it answers those questions and certainly sets the framework that we've just passed. With that, if there's no further discussion, I'll look for a motion.
I move that council approve the reallocation of the City of Lloydminster's current reserves totaling $40,101,414 based on administration's proposal.
Seconder? Councillor Buckingham. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Councillor Thorson, any further discussion?
No.
With that, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? How do you vote, Councillor Thorson?
I vote in favor, and I'm also letting you know that I am going to be off this call now.
Thank you, Councillor. Motion is carried. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you too.
Moving on to agenda item number 6.5, the city manager.
Thank you, Worship. To present 6.5.1 Airport Taxiway Rehabilitation Contract Award, I'll ask James Rogers to come forward.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon, James.
Before you is a request for a decision associated with the Airport Taxiway Rehabilitation Contractor Award. The recommendation is that Council approve the award of the Airport Taxiway Rehabilitation Project to ASL Paving Limited of Lloydminster, Saskatchewan in the amount of $218,686.70, excluding GST, and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. In addition, that Council approve a contingency allowance of 10% in the amount of $21,868.67, excluding GST, to be funded through the approved 2019 capital budget. The Airport Taxiway Rehabilitation Program is an annual program that aims to improve the pavement quality of the taxiways at the Lloydminster Airport. Some portions of the existing taxiways are in such poor condition that in some instances the failures within the taxiways have contributed to damage being sustained by aircraft, and that would be both landing gear as well as props because of fog or foreign object debris. The Airport Taxiway Rehabilitation Program has been an ongoing project that involves cement stabilizing the existing granular base layer and placing an asphalt concrete pavement overlay on top of that. This method has been the preferred method of rehabilitation for the taxiways, as it is a cost-effective strategy that provides for the vehicle's use and weight loading of the areas. In addition to this, the walkways between the airport terminal building and the taxiway hold bay will be rehabilitated to provide aircraft passengers safe access to and from the main terminal building, and this will connect into our runway rehabilitation program, which we are completing right now. Administration issued a request for tender on September 3rd, 2019 to acquire the services of a qualified vendor to complete all necessary work. The tender period closed on September 17, 2019, with 3 bids being received. Below are the 3 prices and the vendors that submitted. The submissions were evaluated based upon the total tender amount, as this went out to our pre-qualified contractors, and construction is scheduled to be completed by October 31st, 2019. For your 2 options, that Council approved the award of the Airport Taxiway Rehabilitation Project to ASL Paving, and second, that Council directed administration to gather more information and that information be presented at the next Council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Questions, comments? Councillor Batchuk.
Yes, thank you, James. I'm just trying to wrap my head around all the work that's being done there. So the project we just finished up, was all of the runways or taxi? This is the second project we're going to do there now.
Yes, thank you for your question. I know, Wade, I'm going to get this wrong. So we've, as part of our work that we've completed right now with Central City Asphalt,
Yes.
which is Transport Canada funded under ACAP, we have completed the main runway,
Okay.
we've completed the taxiway, and the main apron, which is outside of the main hangar building. So that's what we've completed. And now this program deals with the private or the City of Lloydminster owned taxiways that connect the hangars to the main apron.
Okay. I get it, thank you. I was just trying to visualize how it all fit together, and I just couldn't sort out in my head. I don't have a really good picture, sort of from above the ground, looking down to see what work was being done.
So we have had past programs that have also dealt with taxiways out there. This is just an ongoing program, and I believe we have this program in another year, and then we will be completed at the airport.
So James, if I can take a kick at the cat here on this one, my only concern is the timing we have left with Mother Nature. We have streets that still require some asphalt. I know your team is working diligently with the contractor to get those completed. And my concern is, because this is now between us and the hangar owners or hangar lessees, if we rip up in front of their taxiway in front of their hangar and we don't get it fixed until next year in May, how unhappy is somebody going to be if they A, can't get their plane out, or B, can't get their plane in and they're back out again? And that's my biggest concern. So how do we mitigate that if we approve this? That's, I guess, is the question.
Thank you for your question and your concern, Mayor House. So I have spoken with our contractor, the recommended contractor, ASL Paving, and I have basically put him to task that if we do approve this at this time, can he get this work completed this year in its entirety? Not just cement stabilized to a granular surface, but cement stabilized and an asphalt surface. And he has guaranteed me, yes, he can, barring weather, of course. We can't control that. As part of the background, I did mention the rehabilitation strategy that we are implementing at the airport, and that is we will be peeling off the asphalt that's there, that's lifed out. We will be cement stabilizing the base that is there, and then putting asphalt back down on top. So this isn't like a typical road rehab where we peel the asphalt off, dig everything out, and then replace the granular structure. We're going to use what is there. So it is an expedited rehabilitation process.
Okay, and let's go back to this one more time on a little different angle. We know that since I have the opportunity to sign every contract that basically comes through the city unless I'm not here, and it goes to the deputy mayor, it is going to take a week or so potentially to get that if this is approved. If that project doesn't get launched in 2019, Mother Nature, would this price stick for 2020, and can we pick it up first thing in the spring with the contractor? How would the contract be structured?
I would have to work with the contractor, but we have on other programs extended them over the next year as long as we maintain the work. They have been fairly gracious with us to hold their unit rates to the next year if we do get into that circumstance.
Yeah, that's my only concern. I think this is a great project, and as you've indicated in the request for decision, this has been ongoing. We've been taking pieces and working away at it. I think the folks at the airport that have hangars totally understand and they appreciate getting it done. I'm just, as we saw this morning, I woke up to rain after a beautiful day yesterday. We know fall is here, and I just get a little nervous about laying asphalt in October, as I've expressed in the past over the last couple of years sitting in this chair. But I have all the faith that between yourselves and ASL, if that's approved, we'll get this done when Mother Nature cooperates. So, fair enough, I appreciate the response. I'll let the Chief Financial Officer.
This project is also supported by grant money from the federal gas tax on the Saskatchewan side.
Okay, thank you very much. Good information. Any other questions or comments, Councilor Baker?
No, I have no question directly to it, but I can't get over the pricing differences. So we're talking about budgets and things like that. What number would you pick if you're throwing a dart before you went to tender? They're all reputable companies, and the bids from over double from low to high. 3 different. Do you got any thoughts on mine?
Thank you for your question. I can't put a number to where it should come in at. I do know we have 2 local contractors, and that would be ASL Paving and Sphere Maintenance. E-Construction, they were local, but they've since closed down their office and have moved, I believe, to Bonnyville or Cold Lake. So their price reflects them mobilizing a crew to Lloydminster, trucking their aggregate, their asphalt, and there is some intricacies in that. We have seen their prices on the higher end on all our other programs. And then between our 2 local contractors, ASL Paving and Sphere, I believe it's just a equipment difference. One contractor might own some equipment that can do this work.
There'd be some mobilization costs if they're in Cold Lake and that done. I didn't realize they'd moved,
Yes.
but that's quite a moving cost.
Yeah,
I've
there's
never
a-
compared people move. I just wondered because
I
all
think
over the place.
if I can add, Councillor, I think ASL did some cement stabilization work for us on 40th, and certainly they've had the experience and may have that
Oh,
equipment,
sure.
like James has outlined, that makes that difference, so.
But overall construction's been around for 100 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely, but I think that, and I guess I would also say timing of the year
That's correct.
as another part of that, exactly, because we're on that
So I was
backside.
saying it doesn't really matter when you bid the job.
Well, it's always interesting, because again, from my limited experience in this portion of it, was that the springtime usually gets a pretty good deal.
January 1st.
Yeah, January 1st is a great time to tender for the spring, and as things start to pile up for the contractors and their workload, it gets a little, it can vary at the end, because you could easily have a contractor come in with a very low bid because they just want a little bit more work to finish off the year and they don't have anything else, so it's a very up and down.
Not the manager's going to tell us it's a misprint, but I guess not.
Any other comments? Thank you, James. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll look to direction from council. Councilor Buckingham.
Move the council approve the award of the airport taxiway rehabilitation program to ASL Paving Limited of Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, in the amount of $218,686.70, excluding GST, and the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. In addition, the council approve a contingency allowance of 10% in the amount of $21,868.67, excluding GST, to be funded through the approved 2019 capital budget.
Seconder? Councilor Baker? Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks very much, James. Moving on to 6.5.2, the city manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. To present 6.5.2, Safety Codes, Inspection Services, Building and Plumbing Disciplines, I'll ask Natasha to come forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here today to ask Council to approve the award of the Safety Codes Inspection Services of the Building and Plumbing Disciplines to Superior Safety Codes, Inc. of Lloydminster, Alberta, with a 60-40 financial split between themselves and 40% to the city. The City of Lloydminster is looking to secure a vendor to provide us with building and plumbing issuance and inspection services for a 12-month period, at which time a new RFP will be issued. At the September 16th GPC meeting, this item was discussed. An RFP was issued on July 11th and closed on August 8th, 2019. 2 proposals were received, both fulfilling minimum requirements. They were evaluated based on our scoring system, and based on a technical and financial score, Superior Safety Codes had the highest combination score. Since there is an unknown value to this contract in a calendar year, administration identified within the RFP the identified calculation as to how finances would be evaluated. Superior Safety Codes proposed a 60-40 split, and Inspections Group a 75-25 split. Based on their financial and technical score, administration is recommending that this be awarded to Superior Safety Codes, Inc.
Thank you, Natasha. Questions or comments? Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Natasha. We looked at bringing this in-house at one point,
We did, yes.
and we found this to be a far superior idea.
We were unable to obtain the necessary individuals to, that could accommodate the uniquenesses to Lloydminster. So the decision at this time was to keep it as an out-of-house, out-of-scope service. The reason this RFP is issued on a 12-month period is because we're continuing to go through efficiencies. What can we do internally? What can we do externally to make the process easier for administration as well as applicants of both building and development permits? Over the next 12 months, I can't foresee us being in a position to bring it in-house, but it's always something that we constantly consider.
And that's what I was wondering, if both the city and the proponent were comfortable with a 12-month, or if the idea of having a longer period on that was ever entertained by either side.
It was inquired for a longer period of time. Like I said, we're going through some efficiencies internally as well. And based on that, we were not in a position to commit to longer than 12 months because that's going to most likely change some of the scopes within our RFP.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor.
I just think it's pretty straightforward. I think that Superior Safety Codes are very familiar with Lloydminster and area. And just because of the split, 60-40 is better than 75-25 in my mathematics, so thank you, Natasha.
Good math, Counselor. Good math. Any other comments? Counselor Baker?
Yes, just a question. Are they still located, Superior still located here?
They still do
Is
have
Jeff
their
still
office.
running?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Counselor Fletcher?
Yeah, just a quick question on the scores, because the high score is 52.7, and the next one's 43. If that was out of 100, it would be not so good. I guess when I was looking at that, I was going, we are getting a quality product, and I'm betting it's not out of 100, so.
No. So the scores were brought down in the financial because we evaluate them based on our calculation, not the standard method.
Okay.
Our calculation that we identified in the RFP was based on how we evaluated our 2017 permits, which kind of brought it down. If you look at their technical scores, they were very on par with each other technically wise, delivering us very similar services, but it did come down to the financial. Had we evaluated in this traditional method, they would have been about 30 points higher each.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. That's a good point. That 52% of the class, and they were considered. So.
Teacher comes out, yeah.
It's all good. It's all good.
You're passing, but
Counselor Baker?
Your Worship, as I look at the key staff qualification experience, only 15%.
So when they prevented their key
In
staff
their
qualifications, and that was worth 50% of their 100 score.
That's all for experience and qualifications.
Yes, so when administration evaluated it,
Is that not pretty low?
it
Just
was,
a question.
I don't know if I have answered if it was low or not, when administration went through the things we needed between their corporate qualifications, their staff qualifications, it was given the weight of 15%.
To me, that'd be very important, that whoever's gonna do the work is very qualified to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It might be more important than a work plan,
Okay,
to me, but
I can definitely
I'll
flag
just
it.
leave it with you guys.
Yeah, I'll flag it, because in 12 months, we'll be re-RFPing the service, and I can add some additional consideration to how we weight that.
Any other comments or questions?
yeah, perhaps it's a broader commentary, but I guess if I'm just sort of wondering if there's, and this is not to put you on the spot, Natasha, it's a broader question. For us as a city, are we looking at a particular threshold that we would accept or retender on a total percentage out of 100? Because it was out of 100 in total score, and yet, other scores are coming in 70s, 80s, whatever it is, and this one is particularly low compared to others relative to those, so.
Yeah, so we kind of realized that after the fact, and that was based on the way we had identified evaluating the financial score. We had some discussions with Mika as well, and because we identified it that way in our RFP, we had to score it that way, which, like I said, brought them down. We're kind of going through, is this the way we do it next time? There may have been goods or bads either way, but since it was identified in the RFP, we had to score them this way. In the opinion of administration, both vendors do meet the requirements and could successfully perform the tasks we're asking of them.
Counselor Fletcher?
Natasha, I was just wondering, as far as the fees for services go, is that set by Superior, or is there?
No, it's all set by the city of
Okay.
Valley. Yeah.
Perfect.
And separate note, we are currently also reviewing those as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any, I'll look for direction from council on 6.5. What's my number here? 2. Yes, Councilor?
That council approved the award of the Safety Codes Inspection Services Building and Plumbing Disciplines to Superior Safety Codes, Inc. of Lloydminster, Alberta, with a 60-40 financial split between Superior Safety Codes, Inc., 60%, and the City of Lloydminster, 40%, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents.
Thank you, Councilor. Seconder? Councilor Buckingham. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Natasha, but I believe you're going to be up here for a little bit. So,
Thank
move to 6.7 bylaws. I'll let the city manager.
We're here to ask council to grant first reading to bylaw 24, 2019. This bylaw is to close a portion of the road and consolidate with adjacent properties. This was brought forward to both Land Division and the city by J&R Automotive, and they have applied to... Oh, we're Eastwood first?
Yep.
Sorry, I mixed up my own reports then.
All right,
I'll reshuffle them.
so start with 22.
Yeah. Sorry, let's
That's
try
okay.
that again. Okay, so we're here to ask council to grant first reading to bylaw 22, 2019, being a bylaw to amend a portion of the MDP. These lands are located in Eastwood Trailer Court. This is done in order to continue to facilitate the subdivision and the purchase and sale of the subject lands. In order to do those two, an amendment to the MDP and land use bylaw must be approved. The purpose of this proposed amendment is to take the subdivided lands and align them with the adjacent land use, which is the adjacent park lands. These lands will be used to serve as additional parking. Through this review process, through the internal review process, comments were received. However, it was determined that they were associated to the subdivision and the land use bylaw amendment process and will be addressed accordingly. There were no issues brought forward with the amendment to the MDP. This item was discussed on September 16th at GPC. Bylaw 22 and 23 must be approved concurrently. Following the approval of bylaw 22 and 23, the subdivision approving authority can consider the lands for subdivision approval.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Questions or comments? Not seeing any questions or comments, I'll look for direction from council. Councilor Buckingham.
Move the council grant first reading of bylaw 22-2019, being a bylaw to amend approximately 0.234 hectares or 0.58 acres of part of parcel B, plan 74B09143, within the southeast quarter, section 2, township 50, range 28, west of the 3rd meridian on map 2. Future land use concept and bylaw 01-2013 from residential to parks, trails, and open spaces. In addition, the council will establish a public hearing to be held in City Council chambers during the regular council meeting on October 28th, 2019 at 2 p.m.
Seconder? Councilor Patrick. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to 6.7.2, discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here to ask council to grant first reading to bylaw 23, 2019, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw. This one will go hand in hand with bylaw 22, however, includes a larger portion of the lands. The purpose of this amendment, the purpose of including the additional lands was to also bring the remainder of the trailer court into compliance with the land use bylaw. In June of this year, referrals were distributed and comments were received. The city engaged in discussions with the Saskatchewan Ministry of Environment, and it was determined that there was some uncertainty to the status of the city's old landfill. At current day, the landfill is considered both a historical landfill and an impacted site. Due to this uncertainty, the city is engaging in a historical landfill closure study, which will clearly identify the status of the landfill for both the city and the ministry. Administration has put this forward that the historical landfill closure study will be accepted by council prior to the final approval of these bylaws. Saskatchewan requirements require municipalities to have a complete understanding of their old landfills prior to considering adjacent lands for residential use. Again, 22 and 23 must be approved concurrently, and following this approval, the subdivision approving authority can consider the lands for subdivision.
Questions or comments? I'll look to administration. I'm not sure if it's Natasha or the city manager. The study that's referred to is ongoing, and we expect that to come back to council in the near future.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. I believe, I think the report is due October 17th, somewhere in that area, and then it will come back to council as a report for information following.
Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll look for direction from the city council. Councilor Buckingham.
Move the council grant first reading of bylaw 23-2019, being the bylaw to amend approximately 3 hectares or 7.43 acres of all of parcel B, plan 74B09143, and lot 2, block 37, plan 79B17275, and lot C, block 37, plan BM2070, and lot B, block 44, plan BM2070, all within the southeast quarter section of 2, township 50, range 28 west of the 3rd meridian, on the land use map being part 4 to bylaw 5-2016, from R4, medium density residential district, to RMH, residential manufactured home district, and urban park district. In addition, the council established a public hearing to be held at City Hall. On the regular council meeting on October 28th, 2019 at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconded. Councillor Batchor. Any further discussion? Councillor Baker.
Your worship, if the ministry has further questions, is this going to sit on hold till we have the final report, regardless of the date?
I believe so. So the first date that all we're setting is the public hearing date.
Oh, yes, but
And yes, I believe that's subject to the...
that will be extended at the end until,
And we'll need to make sure that we've got everything in order before we...
it didn't make much sense finalizing it until
Yeah.
then.
No, absolutely, and I think administration is aware of that, and the discussion that we've had with administration is that we'll get everything in order, but to keep the steps moving forward, we'll start this process and see where it goes. Second, there was Councillor Batchor. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Natasha. Moving on to 6.7.3.
Okay, we're here to ask council to grant first reading to bylaw 24/2019, being a bylaw to close a portion of road in the province of Alberta. This road closure will be facilitate a sale and consolidation with adjacent lands. It was brought forward to Land Division and Planning Development by J&R Automotive. The proposed road closure will be subject to a consolidation with adjacent lands, as well as a purchase and sale agreement between the purchaser and the city. This item was brought forward to GPC on September 16th. Alongside the road closure, amendments to the MDP and land use bylaw will be required to facilitate future development. Referrals were distributed and no immediate concerns were brought forward. Recently, ATCO has brought forward the requirement of an easement, which will be addressed through the process. Engineering determined that the lane is surplus and unnecessary for future growth of the city of Lloydminster. Bylaws 24, 25, and 26, 2019 must be approved concurrently. Additionally, Planning and Development has confirmed that the Ministry Alberta Transportation approval on this road closure bylaw is not required.
Thank you, Natasha. Questions or comments?
Yeah, just a comment, I think we drove by there, we can't even see a road or anything else actually exists there, so it's on paper only.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. With that, I'll look for direction from council. Councillor Fagan.
That council grant first reading to bylaw 24-2019, being a bylaw to close approximately 0.45 hectare, 0.11 acre, part of lane plan 8140V and lot 3, block 23, plan 8140V in the north quarter, section 01, township 50, range 014 W4M. In addition to that, council established a public hearing to be held at City Hall Council Chambers during the regular council meeting on October 28, 2019 at 2 p.m.
And that was the northeast quarter of Lee Beach. Thank you, Councillor. Seconder. Councillor Baker. Any further discussion on this time? Councillor Baker.
Quick question, did you sell that land at Lloydminster?
That would be part of it.
That's what's leading to this whole process. So it's being, we have an offer to purchase, I believe,
Correct.
but until this is resolved, we can't sell it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And it is the current adjacent landowner? or-
Yes, it is. So it's the remainder
It's
of
not a
the,
big deal, but by law, we have to.
Yeah, it's the
We
process
can't,
that,
since it is legally lane, we can't sell public roadway. We have to close it and then sell it.
good question, Councilor.
I must have missed that one.
That's all good. Any other questions? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, Natasha, continue on.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here to ask council to grant first reading to bylaw 25, 2019, being a bylaw to amend the municipal development plan in order to continue to facilitate the road closure and the consolidation of the lands previously identified. An amendment to the MDP must be approved to designate the appropriate future land use of the subject lands. Following the road closure in bylaw 24, the landowner does have intentions to develop within these properties in which a land use must be designated. Referrals were distributed and no concerns were brought forward from affected parties. This item was discussed on September 16th at GPC. Again, bylaw 24, 25, and 26, 2019 must be approved concurrently.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll look for direction from council. Councilor Buckingham.
Move the council grant first reading of bylaw 25-2019, being a bylaw to amend approximately 0.05 hectares or 0.137 acres of part of Lane Plan 8140B and Lot 3, Block 23, Plan 8140B in the northeast quarter section of 1 Township 50, Range Road, or Range .014 west of the 4th Meridian on map 2. Future lands use concept in bylaw 01-2013 to commercial. In addition, the council will establish a public hearing to be held at City Hall Council Chambers during the regular council meeting on October 28th, 2019 at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Councilor. Seconder? Councilor Dodczyk. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on, Natasha.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're here to ask council to grant first reading to bylaw 2016-2019, being a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw. Following the road closure and the amendment to the MDP, in order to facilitate on-the-ground development, and an amendment to the land use bylaw must be approved. We're asking council to designate these lands as C5 service commercial, which aligns with adjacent land uses. Referrals were distributed in September and no comments were brought forward. This was discussed on September 16th at GPC. Lastly, again, bylaw 24, 25, and 26, 2019 must be approved concurrently.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? And C5 is the adjoining,
Correct.
their sitting in C5 is just
Yes.
going to, okay. That's crystal clear then. With that, I'll look for council for direction. Councilor Buckingham.
Move the council grant first reading of bylaw 26-2019, being a bylaw to amend approximately 0.05 hectares or 0.137 acres of part of Lane Plan 8140B and Lot 3, Block 23, Plan 8140B, in the northeast quarter, Section 01, Township 50, Range .01 west of the 4th Meridian, on land use map being Part 4 to bylaw 5-2016 to C5, service commercial, and the council established a public hearing to be held at City Hall Council Chambers during the regular council meeting on October 28th, 2019 at 2 p.m.
Thank you, Councilor. Seconded, Councilor Baker. Any further discussion or comments before I call for the question? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Moving to item number 7, correspondence information items. Moving on to item number 8, Mayor and Council reports. My report for last month is attached for council and viewers' interest. Certainly, it was a busy month again. School is back, summer holidays are over, and things are picking up around the city from various events on weekends to regular visits throughout the week. We had the honor and privilege to have 2 ministers from the government of Alberta travel in the last month to our city to meet and discuss, which was very good. One was Minister Sawney from Social Services, and here to discuss, and she met with myself and Councilor Buckingham, discuss FCSS funding and understanding how it contributes to our city. And we had the opportunity to make a very strong case of continued FCSS funding in the upcoming budget. And again, that's subject to the provincial government's decision. Second, Minister Jason Loon, who is responsible for the mental health and addictions. And he was out at the Slimthorpe after the recent announcement by the Premier and the Government of Alberta announcing there's additional funding for mental health and addiction beds. So he was there to tour the facility for the first time and was very impressed to see the Slimthorpe and all that it offers, and to see that it is being currently underutilized, and putting in a plan that they could actually have work done without building capital. And I think that was a major selling point in our case, that we had a facility ready to go to work, and we didn't have anybody in it, and we didn't have anybody to see people put into it. So the Government of Alberta stepped forward with that. Other than that, we've covered a lot of ground on different things. Like I say, a lot of activities in the city. City manager and I attended the Alberta Mid-Sized Mayors and CAO meeting in Lethbridge, which we received a presentation from Minister Madhu, who is the Minister of Municipal Affairs in Alberta, and followed by the following day an opportunity to chat with Premier Kenny and chat with him for an hour as well. So it was, we covered a lot of ground at those meetings. Certainly there's, the communities face a lot of the similar challenges that we face, as we discussed, and we're all waiting patiently on the provincial budget to determine where we would be going with MSI funding, police funding, library funding, and FSCSS funding, all funding that the city depends on very greatly from the province of Alberta. So it was well covered. Other than that, that's where, as the council knows, we'll make the public aware, Alberta Urban Municipalities Association Conference is being held in Edmonton later this week, and council and local council will be attending that conference to speak to ministers and fellow municipal leaders across Alberta to compare notes and discuss where we're going and how we're going to continue to carry our message forward to the federal and provincial governments. I'll leave it to any other council members. Councilor Dodger.
A couple of things. I had the opportunity to bring greetings as you were meeting, you and the Deputy Mayor were meeting with the Minister, and you know, it was an honor to do so, and it was follow-up from Neil Wood, who was the Fire Chief at RN 437 North Battleford, and his message to me is that the conference border on disasters was deeply moved by your speech, your thoughtfulness, and integrity of others. I'm not a good writer or speaker, if I ask if it's okay to have a copy of your speech to help me with my firefighting team or a new department from April 1st, 2019. So I did forward him the speech and made it clear that who was responsible. Our communications officer, Eric Healy, in the back there was, I added, I think, 4 words and omitted about 8. So, and I forwarded the speech on to him, though I was glad to do that. Subsequently, we've talked to people both at the college and the community that attended, and they've expressed support and certainly a lot of very, very positive comments about the conference overall. We had a Truth and Reconciliation meeting the same day as well at Fort Pitt, and a wonderful facility. And it's, again, I think, you know, we sometimes forget the history that's around us, and it was really kind of a pleasure and just sort of an awakening in some ways to be able to see the beauty of the area and the history that we have, and right in our own backyard here. So it is a jewel, definitely, in the crown here. Our Vermilion River Regional Alliance was on Thursday night, and so one of the things that we've been working hard to try and change is moving away from a majority vote to a consensus vote around identifying common priorities as kind of the driver in that agreement. So we're 99% done, and I've been stuck with the 1% to do the final editing because I was so supportive of that direction, if I could put it so mildly. So there's some minor tweaks that are left to be done in there, and I will do that very happily. And I think going forward, it puts us in a better position as opposed to simply being outvoted and really forcing the group to identify common priorities that we want to work towards, and not just priorities that may benefit 1 or 2 members of that alliance. So I think it's a positive shift and a direction that we can support.
Thank you, Councillor. I just wanted to add that it was the RMO Frenchman Butte that hosted us for that Truth and Reconciliation meeting, and they did a terrific job in Frenchman Butte, so that was very much appreciated. And welcome them to that group as well, as I believe they'll be regular members, so that's terrific. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Worship. As I consider myself blessed to have the opportunity to bring things like this forward, I'm going to. We talk about the economic downturn is the word that everybody uses. I want to talk about the resiliency of our community. I've had the good fortune to be a part of a number of events in the last few weeks, one of which was a first responder family fundraiser for one of our first responders who's going through a bit of a challenge, to put it lightly. And between members of the community and businesses and everybody else, $10,000 was raised in one night for that family. The next day, I got to be part of the Bordertown Hawk Chapter Toy Run. In that day, even in this economy that we talk about, over $70,000 was raised that day, putting them over $500,000 in 9 years. That mostly stays in our community, which is no small feat. Terry Fox Run was the same weekend, had good support for that, 38 years running. And just a kudos to everybody in this community who steps up when asked. And we don't say it enough. So thank you to everybody that made all of those efforts possible. And of course, this weekend we have the Health Foundation hockey game between the Oilers and the Flames alumni, and the first game sold out so quickly. There are still tickets available for the noon game that is happening there as well. So an opportunity to support Project Sunrise that weekend. But again, in 5 hours, first announced game sold out. And that just speaks to the community stepping up once again with all the money and proceeds going to that project. So thanks to the community. We live it. We take it for granted sometimes, I think. I don't. It's, we're very blessed.
Thank you, Council. I believe you will be lacing up for that game, will you not?
No sense bringing that up.
Okay, we'll talk about that right now. So, any other comments or items that need to be just brought up from the council report?
I was just going to add, Your Worship, that we had a couple of new members that were attending, not only other municipalities, but Synergy and Co-op Tenant Center, Truth and Reconciliation. So we're seeing, more industry and businesses that want to get associated with it. And so some of the discussions on the table were really rich in terms of what possibilities we have in terms of economic development to partner within First Nations and off-site and First Nations territory as well as city territory. And anyway, so it was interesting to see that level of dialogue going forward. I know the city is part of the iSummit, but these are discussions that are happening outside of it, and I think it's very positive to see that.
Absolutely. And I guess that's a good point. Bring people's attention. The iSummit will be held on October 3rd, I believe it is, at the Lloyd Exhibition Grounds, and the city is the lead sponsor, so I encourage council members, if you have the opportunity to attend for a portion of the day or the entire day, certainly would be appreciated. And our economic team, development team has been working hard with the Chamber of Commerce to help make that event happen again, and we've been there ever since it started, so certainly the support of council would be greatly appreciated as well. At this time, is there any other matters that this council needs to consider? If not, I will look to inquiries from the media.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today we have requests from the media for yourself, Mayor Albers, and Councillor Baker.
All right.
Motion to recess.
Motion to recess. Second. Councillor Buckingham, all in favor? Carried.
This morning, I got an interview with a counselor/psychologist tomorrow, so 8:30 until about 2, we're going to have an interview.